learn about these issues based on the texts, they met with their Brazilian partners to explore a variety of different topics revolved around intercultural conflict. Contact 4 was the last contact that students had with each other. And during this last contact, students were given the ability to discuss whatever they liked. And this could be, popular culture trends, food, social issues, sports, soccer, football, right? And the intention behind this was to provide an opportunity to students to explore things beyond the issues that we discussed in class. And the important thing here is that after every contact, students were given very specific instructions to do self-reflections and to write reflection papers about their experiences and elaborate on the cultural similarities and differences that they discovered. And our debriefing sessions and these self-reflective essays, I would say, are one of the most important components of our collaboration, because self-reflection helps students process their experiences. It helps them understand and empathize with cross-cultural issues that might be strange to them initially. And it also helps them understand their own cultural identities and how they might be very different from other people. I would say it's a very integral part of their learning experiences. In addition to establishing 4 separate contact points, students also created collaborative YouTube videos. So each team created a joint YouTube video where they presented information about the Brazilian and American cultures. And these videos for about 3 to 4 minutes long. And these videos were my favorite part of this initiative. They were so creative, so insightful. They were so funny. They were an absolute joy to watch. And it became very apparent to us that students really checked their own initial assumptions about each other's culture, and that these interactions that the students had with one another really enhanced their understanding of intercultural issues, global issues, and they really understood how their own cultures influence the way that they think, communicate, and even perceive different situations. For instance, I'm just going to give you a very simple example that Tanya already brought up. Time orientation is, in the United States, is generally what we call monochronic. We view time as this linear concept with a beginning and an end. When you think about it, we only have 24 hours in a day, and if you want to get things done, you really need to manage your time, right? So most people value efficiency. We have our own agendas and we have our own schedules, and most people know in advance, what their week is going to look like. If you ask me, I know what my entire month is going to look like, even like 6 months down the road. But my students discovered that perhaps Brazilian students do not function this way, right? And Brazilian students are more relaxed with their time. They're really, really flexible. And even Carlos, my COIL partner professor, often jokes that Brazilians usually need just a couple of hours of notice. So if Tanya and I ever decide to visit Brazil, right? So we should just give him a 4-hour notice in advance, and he should be able to pick us up from the airport. Like, that's all he needs. He needs 4-hour notice. So relaxed time orientation is definitely something that my students learned about, and they also had to adjust to. So at the end of this semester, after our pilot project ended and we received feedback from our students, we definitely felt like COIL was a great complement, not only as a pedagogy, but also as a strategy for engaging cultural differences. It helped our students develop critical thinking skills. They also learned about how to navigate cross-cultural issues. They learned about working in a team with other people. And they also recognized that they could have a ton of similarities with somebody who had a totally different upbringing in a different part of the world. And one of the greatest advantages of COIL, I would say, that it was completely virtual and it was completely free. And students relied on technology. So when COVID-19 forced universities to a remote learning model in March, this had little impact on our students because they were already interacting on WhatsApp. And these virtual exchanges, as Tanu mentioned, could really be great alternatives in situations like right now where students are not able to go abroad. And at the end of the semester, I sent out an exit survey to all of the 35 students in my class to assess their experiences, just to, gauge what type of experiences that they had. And out of the 35 students, 34 had an overwhelmingly positive experience. One student mentioned that they struggle with the concept of talking to strangers on WhatsApp. But we see that our pilot project helps students expand their understanding and appreciation for other cultures. We also see that they were able to gain valuable insights into other cultures, and because of that, they are better able to recognize cultural differences. The next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the lessons learned. So what are some of the lessons that we learned from this process? And again, although our project started before COVID-19, we definitely had to navigate around certain issues. Due to the pandemic, FATEC Americana had to shut down for a few weeks. And initially, Carlos and I were not really sure if we could continue on giving these interruptions. We probably talked every day trying to figure out how to mitigate certain problems. And we were also at that time very open with our students. And I think that because of our open communication, we were able to shift some things around in our syllabus. We moved up some deadlines for our student contacts and then the following reflection papers. But we made sure that our students felt comfortable with the new deadlines, and we certainly provided some accommodations to those students who needed it. And at the end, I would say that it worked out, but it definitely needed a little bit of an adjustment. Language issues were an important challenge, but I would say that it was definitely a necessary challenge of this process. The reason why I'm saying it is two-sided. One is Brazilian students felt some sort of discomfort speaking English with native speakers. Some of them were shy, some of them were not really confident with their speaking abilities. And on the other hand, American students definitely adjusted to speaking to non-native speakers who couldn't really understand their jargon, their idioms, like the slangs that they were using. But because they were in a group of 4 students together, they were more equipped to handle these issues because they helped each other out. There were definitely some cultural issues. As I mentioned before, the relaxed time orientation was something that my American students definitely had to adjust to. In the beginning, this frustrated some of my students who were very organized with their time schedules, but at the end, they just saw it as a Brazilian way of life and learned to be flexible as well.
Okay, so based on all of that information, I would actually like to conclude by summarizing some of the best practices we came up with. We definitely found that flexibility and open communication between the faculty members is very crucial. We also lucked out in many ways because the first meeting Osvaldo, Carlos, Elshon, and I had together, it felt like we had been friends for years. So it was very, we immediately know this will work. But despite that comfort, Elshon and Carlos talked every week, either via email, sometimes it would be 2 or 3 times a week. When the matching process was going on, they discussed some of the challenges, something like if a student had to drop out of the class, that agility to move the expectations and that to move the teams was very important. And that's where the faculty communication is a crucial best practice. And this interaction actually increased after COVID-19 because they would, as Elshon mentioned, they were talking almost every day, adjusting to how the situations were evolving. We, in addition to the faculty communication channels, strongly encourage, and we observed that student communication channels are very important. Student collaborations are very important. So a big part of this process was to encourage our students to seek out better ways to communicate with each other, work with each other, whether it was the 2 students in the US working with the 2 students in the Brazil, or whether it was students working between each other, because within the US, you can have students who have very completely different cultural behaviors and time orientations. So we observed that student collaborations work very well. And as, again, as teachers, we have to sometimes just talk to them and be like, okay, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And that usually works. It gives them a safety net. There's a buddy system in place. And if you can do it, that would be great. The third best practice we thought about and came up with was designing pedagogical interventions in a very, very intentional manner. In many ways, that was probably something that took Elchin and I the longest, because we made sure that everything ties back to what they will be doing. All the questions in the contact guidelines, as well as the reflection papers, were guided so they could really apply what they were learning in the class. Along the same lines, the debriefs were very important after every contact, because these proved to be great opportunities to clear any kind of confusions, share any kind of excitement they might have. Lastly, if possible, we would recommend using student feedback. It can be an exit survey like Elchin used, or it could be a different tool. You can have, hers was an open-ended survey with questions, open-ended questions. It allowed her to collect a lot of qualitative data. You can use any other tool you want, but basically the student feedback allows you to learn what you're doing well, what is working, what is not working, so you can improve it later on. So it's just kind of getting an evaluation that helps you make your program stronger. So that was about it from us. We would be very happy to entertain any questions at this point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haskoller. Thank you very much, Dr. Kohli, for the outstanding presentation. Moreover, thank you for the outstanding work you're doing. I guess the world, we gain a different perspective about the world, about different cultures, when we actually get to interact with each other. So that there is definitely no substitute to that real interaction. And this is what is happening through these projects. And that is life-changing. So thank you for this work. And now there is an interesting part of this seminar. We have very interesting questions coming from the audience. So we will start addressing these questions. And so the first question we have from the audience is the following, and I will address it to Dr. Kohli, is what sort of criteria do you search in a potential partner for a COIL project? And how can Dominican higher education institutions participate in a similar virtual project?
I would say it is important to find a disciplinary match. So the students, so that both the faculty and the students don't have to go too much out of their way to learn new materials just to accommodate this program. So what we found was Carlos was already talking about Hofstede's dimensions with his students, and Elchin was already talking to Hofstede's dimensions with her students. So it seems like a natural meeting point that, oh, this is a course in art behavior. Art course does talk about intercultural communication behavior. So when you're trying to find a good partner, you want to find someone who has similar learning objectives. And what that'll allow you to do is it'll basically allow you to create a program that works with your course and your learning objectives fairly easily. I think I'll let Elchin handle the second part of the question, which was how can Dominican Republic institutions participate in such partnerships? Elchin, do you want to answer that one?
Sure, kind of piggyback on everything that you said. I definitely agree with Tanu that there needs to be an organic mesh between, both of the courses, right? And because pedagogically speaking, right, both of the course objectives needs to be aligned in both of the courses, right? So the professors need to see eye to eye about what they want their students to get out of these experiences. And then I think that having a COIL coordinator is someone, you know, like we had, is really crucial in this, right? Because when I met with, Carlos was already a really good fit for a lot of the things that I wanted to do in my class. And as far as, our advice for other folks to be able to establish things like this, I would definitely recommend first tap into your own networks, right? Perhaps a faculty member who is teaching similar courses in another country, right? Whether it could be international relations or it could be a multinational, marketing course. If you feel like if the course objectives are aligned and you could do something collaborative together, so definitely I would recommend tapping into your own networks because it doesn't cost anything. It's completely free. I know that the State Department has a variety of different grants, especially the Stevens Institute has a variety of different grants to implement virtual exchange programs for students ranging from middle school through a university. So I would definitely perhaps look into getting a grant. I know that right now Celaya Connect Global is another program that Tina and I looked into. And right now they received the grant from the Stevens Institute, and they're able to bring together college-aged youth in the United States and in the Middle East and North Africa for online and face-to-face dialogue. And because they have this, grant from the US Department, the fees that they're charging, they're just charging for registration fees, and they're really minimal. And I also know that US Embassy in Santo Domingo is offering grants up to $25,000 to implement virtual exchange programs. But again, tapping into your networks, looking into these grants, and really trying to network with people, whose courses or whose programs and projects align with what you want to do would be the first step to take.
I would like to add to what Elchin said, and when we were doing research on COIL projects, as Elchin said, we tapped into our networks. We read a lot on teaching strategies, and that was a helpful resource to figure out who's doing what. That's how we knew that FIU already had a COIL partnership. Some institutions might have a central COIL coordinator, some might not. So you might also benefit from just thinking about it in that fashion, and that would work as well.
Sounds exciting. So let's hope that new initiatives can result out of this seminar, right?
Yeah, we love that. We love the word innovating. We love anything innovative to improve our projects and programs. Yeah. So that's something that's definitely very exciting for us.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we have another question. This question is from Kirsty. She's saying, I love that every meeting has a defined objective. In what way do you recommend following up on these encounters between student peer groups, and can the faculty members intervene?
Aquí dice disponible interpretaciones en inglés y en español.
Okay.
Yes.
So yes, I would say yes and no. So for programs such as Celaya, they do have a facilitator. They do bring together college-age youth in the United States and Middle East and North Africa for an online face-to-face dialogue, and they do have facilitators. And I think that this could be a great way to help students process some of their experiences that wouldn't necessarily make sense to us, right? Because a lot of my students were experiencing a variety of different cultural things, right? But they wouldn't recognize that there were cultural things in the beginning, like things like time orientation, right? When they were frustrated that Brazilian students were flexible, or they would cancel their meetings, or they would want to schedule a meeting 4 hours in advance as opposed to a week in advance. They had a hard time seeing some of these issues as cultural. So definitely I would say, whether the professors intervene as facilitators during these conversations, or you have debriefing sessions afterwards, I would say that you definitely need these intervention strategies, then you definitely need that person who has a better understanding of these cultural contexts in order to contextualize a lot of the things that the students are experiencing. One downside about the professor intervening in these conversations would be students might be shy. So if, and I see this a lot in my classes, right? And I'm sure Tanu too, my students are so comfortable with our TAs, right? Because the TAs are younger and they're also students. They have no reservations about going up to a TA and asking them questions, but they have some reservations about coming up to us and talking to us because they see us as this, you know, higher authority figure. So when I, as a professor, as this higher authority figure, intervene in their informal conversations with their buddies, then it takes a different tone, and they might not necessarily perhaps would be inclined to dwell into issues that they would if they were to just like talking to each other, right? Like young people talking to young people about soccer and social issues and dancing and, you know, what have you. So depending on which approach you want to take, like whether you want to intervene, you know, in these conversations, or you want to help them afterwards, I would definitely recommend, right, keeping these debriefing sessions and then helping, you know, students process their experiences. That's, you know, Tanu and I just published an article about how to help, you know, students gain intercultural skills, and on and on. All of the, you know, research articles indicate that you do need these interventions, you know, by somebody who is an informed person about these cultural backgrounds and somebody who can help students. And when you have these debriefing sessions and when you have this person, then we see that students are able to make more progress along the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity.
I would like to add quickly to what Elchin said, which is another way of looking at Piercy's question. At FSU and other U.S. education institutions, there is a skill focus. So the idea is that you build life skills in college, especially when students just come to the campus. We want them to learn about balance their checkbooks, but also learning about how to interact with people. So if the professor intervenes too much, they're getting this hand-holding experience in their college life skills category, which works, that support is necessary, but then it doesn't sufficiently challenge them either. So we try not to intervene. It's only when there's a clear communication breakdown that the professor would intervene. And in Elton and Carlos's case, that would happen with, say, a student saying, my partner is not responding to my messages, then Elton would ask Carlos to talk to his students as opposed to trying to contact students on her own. So we try to let them build their life skills, because it will happen that somebody will ghost them and not respond to their messages. They need to learn to deal with it.
Right. That is a good point, because if everything is controlled, right, then there is a part of the process that is lost, which is students learning on how to get the grip on all of this project. So there's another interesting question we have. We know that an appropriate matching is one of the keys for the success of this project. So I would like to, Dr. Coley, when you think of this program, when you design the program, when you're working on this, is there any criteria to creating the peer groups that will be working in the COIL classes?
So Elchin and I both use team projects for our classes, whether it's a COIL class or not. And we both have different approaches. So I'll talk to you about my approach, and then Elchin can add if I miss something. But when I am creating a peer group, typically the first week or so of classes at FSU, the first few days, you can actually add or drop a course. So I definitely wait till the add or drop period of the course to see how the class is moving. And I take that time to learn a little bit more about my students. That gives me the ability to understand who is more extroverted, who is more introverted, who is, say, a science student as opposed to a social science student, and how would that impact their knowledge base in the course? And when I'm able to make those perceptions, I'm able to perceive those differences, I'll try to group them together. In the COIL project, as Elchin mentioned, she made her own teams, and then Carlos provided his teams from there. And his logic of putting teams together was the English speaking ability, who was more comfortable, who was less comfortable. So you can definitely be very intentional about how you form a team or a peer group. And it's not a COIL specific strategy. It can be for any group project that you're doing. But I am very intentional about things like, is there a good amount of gender representation? Is there major representation? Class standing is something I take into account, because I have a lot of freshmen in my classes, and they're just coming out of school. They're used to having a lot of very detailed instructions. And by junior year, students have comfort of FSU's rhythm, and they don't need as much controlling or telling what to do. So what ends up happening is when you put a junior and a freshman together, if the junior is getting really stressed about something, the freshman is getting really stressed about something, the junior student will be like, it's okay, this is how it happens. So that also makes a little difference. And then in terms of international experience, if the student has had an international experience, I try to put them with students who have not had international experiences, because that provides a good yin and yang to the group, as they say. So those are some things I think about when I think of putting students in a peer group together. Elton, do you want to share any of your strategies?
I think you pretty much covered everything that I wanted to say, that we wanted to be very intentional about creating these peer groups, because we want the groups to be aligned at certain points, right? We want them to have similar interests, and we also want the groups to gel well together, because essentially we want the students to have a good time, right? If they are, talking to each other for an hour, 4 to 5 times a semester, and they're creating a collaborative YouTube project, it's preferred that they like each other. They enjoy each other's company, right? But essentially, these are the type of relationships that they built, and sometimes, like, as much as we want to control and predict these variables, sometimes we cannot predict every single thing. But just based on our exit surveys, we see that 34 out of 35 students had an overwhelmingly positive response. So definitely we will continue to be, intentional about matching these students based on their class standing, based on whether or not they're an international student, their personalities, whether they're introverted or extroverted, because you definitely want the groups to be a little bit more balanced with that. Regarding gender, I would say that the majority of my students, majority of the 35 students in the COIL initiative were female. And my students were much younger, mainly freshmen. And Carlos's Brazilian students, they were older, 25 or up. And some of them already had their families, and they were working full-time during the day and attending school in the evening. So in terms of their demographics, our student populations were definitely different from one another. But yeah, as Tanu said, being intentional about all of these things would be our advice, for sure.
Excellent. And finding this appropriate matching between the students, definitely that keeps the motivation going after the project has started. So we have time for one more question, and I would like to say that Lorraine is congratulating you on an interesting program, and she would also like to learn. And maybe we're putting you on the spot, but I'm going to ask Dr. Haskolar. So she would like to learn what would be the next steps for those that are interested in developing a partnership and finding potential partners for COIL projects at Florida State University. So what are the steps that in order to to pursue this?
Okay, so, and let's see. We ran this project, this co-pilot project in the spring semester. We just write a class of 35 students. And right now in the fall semester, we are gonna extend it to 3 different classes. So I will continue to do it with Carlos, again in the fall semester, and Tanu's class of 19, I believe, will implement the COIL project. And then we have another faculty member, Dr. Nama Nagar, and she will also be implementing it. So the next steps would be to identify folks who are in your discipline, who have the same, course objectives as you. And that would be the first step at Florida State. And then the next step would be willingness to do something like this. And, we always talk about, so Tanu teaches 3 sections of Global Perspectives class, and I teach 1. And essentially our next, goal would be to able to implement it in all of our 4 courses. And that's something we'll definitely look into in the spring semester. So if there are any folks who are interested in it, and if they feel like they might be a good match, right, with our classes, with our Global Perspectives class, we would definitely be interested in getting in touch with you and then explore opportunities, with you. And yeah, anything else you want to add, Tanu?
Yeah, just even if your discipline doesn't have a good match with what we are doing, please do get in touch with us. If you know folks who, or if we can definitely try to seek out folks who might be interested. Dr. Nagar, who is actually the 3rd person who's going to be doing the COIL project, is on this webinar as well, and she is saying that there might be some interest from different colleges. So if you need anything, or if you feel that your discipline is not the same as ours, but you want to explore opportunities, do get in touch with us. We'll try to put you in touch with people who might be interested. Our emails are right there on the top, so you can contact us.
Yeah, definitely. And then there is that grant program offered by the U.S. Embassy in Santo Domingo, up to $25,000 to establish a virtual exchange program between an institution in DR and an institution in the United States. So if any of you guys are interested in doing something together and applying for this grant, definitely do get in touch with us. As I said, Tanu and I, we love doing innovative projects, and worst case scenario, you'll get to know a colleague, and we can try to connect you with other people.
Yeah, we don't know when international travel will start full-fledged again, so this might be your opportunity.
Exactly.
That is just excellent. So I will ask everyone to take Dr. Kohli's and Dr. Haskola's word on that. So you can see their emails, and let's contact them, and let's explore opportunities. These opportunities are highly enriching, and let's hope that many COIL projects can result out of this webinar. That would be great. That would be great if that happens. So I would like to say thanks to Dr. Kohli and to Dr. Haskola once again for the presentation, for the work that you are doing through the COIL projects. We wish you all the best in your future projects, and we would like to keep hearing from you about them as well, right? So thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking the time to answer the questions from the audience. So just a couple of things for those that are attending this seminar. You have the contact information of Dr. Kohli and Dr. Haskola once again. Besides that, you will all be receiving a follow-up email just to request for your feedback. So we would like to say thanks. And I must say that the U.S. Embassy notice of funding opportunity at this moment has unfortunately closed. But there will and hopefully be future opportunities for collaboration in this sense as well. So we would like to thank everyone that has attended this exciting and interesting webinar about this great project, the COIL project, and we hope the new opportunities can result for the Dominican Republic with Florida State University, and that this can ignite new ideas, creative ideas, to continue creating, to continue tearing down the boundaries, especially boundaries between our countries, between our institutions. And technology is making our lives easier in this sense, right? So we have reached, unfortunately, we have reached the end of this interesting seminar. Thanks to everyone once again for participating. Once again, thanks Dr. Coley, thanks Dr. Haskoller, and thanks to the US Embassy in Santo Domingo for making this possible. So we wish you all a good afternoon and see you on the next opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.